Welcome to JCATS, a program that seeks to introduce Japanese contextualized literature and ideas for use by missionaries and anyone that seeks to share the gospel with Japanese people.
日本人から聞く日本のキリスト教。
Hey, welcome back to JCats. John here. It's getting hot these days. My goodness, I feel like today? I'm recording on a Wednesday. Monday and Sunday were really, really hot. And then I went for a jog yesterday morning from like just before 6 to like 7. And then I took my daughter to preschool at 9, and it was cooler at 9 than it was on my jog at like 6 a.m., which is weird. Anyway, I think it's cooling off today. We might see some rain soon. Yeah. How's your week going? Anyway, I have a fun topic today. I'll try to keep this intro shorter than the first take that I just deleted because it took so long, but so far it's not looking good. Story time. A few years ago, my wife and I went to a Christian bookstore in Ginza. I found this book called Understanding Japaneseness by Kosuke Nishitani. Basically, the furthest I got into it was seeing the table. I bought it, but as far as taking it home and everything, I read the table of contents. I didn't read it because it's like 5 pages, single space table of contents. Even though the whole book is only like 230 pages. So it's really, really dense, and I never got super interested enough to actually read it. But in late June here, I was helping out, as I do regularly now, with Joy Bible Camp, which is a Christian camp for English-speaking elementary and middle school students in the mountains, like in West Tokyo. Really cool stuff. But since I was like on site, like sleeping there and everything, I used whatever, spare time to read this book. And I read the whole thing, 12 chapters, not like a super long book, but a good book. That's part of my story. Okay, the other part of my story is a few weeks before that, my oldest graduated from 8th grade. And he goes to a Christian school in Tokyo. And another parent of a graduate, I was talking to this guy, good dude. Thank you. I think he maybe listens. So thank you for your recommendation, good sir. He recommended the Mattari Seisho Labo YouTube videos, in which they talk about something called Nihonkyo. And he sent me a link, and I was like, I looked it up, and I was already starting to read my book, Understanding Japaneseness. And the Japaneseness book spends a couple of chapters talking about Nihonkyo. In fact, basically the Japaneseness book looks at Nihonkyo and other, what he refers to as nihonjinron, and in a sense, it seems to me like my book uses the word Nihonkyo, which would be like Japanism, like the religion of the Japanese. Now, don't associate that with Shinto or nationalism. It's something else that I'll try to define in a second here. But he basically talks about that as Yamamoto Shichihei's nihonjinron. And the author Nishitani of the book that I read says Yamamoto, along with four-ish other nihonjinron theorists, Japanologists, taking their points together can sort of create a framework that he presents with the key of the idea of maternal filial affection as sort of the super theory that all, the point guard of his basketball team of Japanologists. His framework utilizes 4 or 5-ish nihonjinron theories, Japanologies, and the point guard of his Japanology team is maternal filial affection. But one of the guys on his Japanologist basketball team, understanding the Japanese framework, is Nihonkyo. And the videos that I was referred are a 4-part series on Nihonkyo. Specifically, Nihonkyo, the Nihonkyo of Yamamoto Shichihei. Right? Shichihei, I think. Funnily enough, the Yamamoto Shichihei, his first book in which he explains Nihonkyo is called The Japanese and the Jews. Apparently, it was not very good as a work that explained the Jews or the Old Testament, but it was a very good book in explaining the Japanese. He writes under a pen name, which he purports to be a Jewish rabbi living in Japan for a long time. People quickly figured out that that wasn't actually the case. He may have tipped them off. My wife, who's Japanese, looked at the pen name, which if you read it the way he wrote it in Japanese, in English it would say Isaiah ben Dasan, which I guess in Japanese you would say Isa ben Dasan, which means like, I'm going to go poop. I'm going to go poop. That was what his pen name would mean to a Japanese person, as I guess a joke. It's the kind of joke that I would normally go for, but it feels weird saying that on my podcast about Japaneseness and Christianity and stuff. Anyway, apparently, both through the videos that I watched and through the book, Nishitani's book, this is very important stuff. Very serious stuff. So let's get right to it. Basically, and I'll link the videos. I enjoyed them. They're in Japanese. They do put little like letters, almost like closed captioning, like simplified closed captioning on the bottom of the screen in Japanese. So if you can like read Japanese and hear Japanese and put them both together, it's a little easier, which is great because Japanese has so many, what would you say, homonyms, words that have the same sounds, but because they have different kanji, it's easier if you see the kanji when you read it to know what they're talking about if you're not a native speaker. So I found it, not super hard to follow. Link in the description if you're interested in watching those videos by Mattari Seisho Labo. Okay, they start by saying, trying to introduce Christianity, and they say like, kind of imagine having an iPhone and switching to an Android phone, and how much, or vice versa, and like how kind of counterintuitive it is. My wife has always used Macs. We call them that. I've always used IBMs. I'm 40 something now, by the way, but non-Macs PCs, non-Apple, the other one. So the point being, you have an OS in your brain, and it's difficult to switch. So the explanation for why, then they go into why is Christianity such a low percent in Japan? And they say, well, let's look at the other low percent Christian countries in the world. And the other, like top 5 or so low Christian percent, less than 2% ish countries, a good number of them are predominantly Islam. A few are predominantly Buddhist. And then there's Japan, which is weird because they're not predominantly anything per se. There's this famous statistics when you ask, you poll people of their religion in Japan, and the numbers come out to like 160% of people are religious in some, because people are more than one, like most people will say, I'm kind of Shintoist and I'm kind of Buddhist or whatever. Who cares? They're kind of atheist. Those are kind of the answers. Yamamoto Shichihei's proposition is that everyone in Japan is a Japanist, is an adherent of Nihonkyo, without even knowing it. So everyone in Japan already has this OS, operating system, in their brain installed, and that's why it's difficult to switch their OS from Nihonkyo to Kiristokyo, just like countries that are predominantly Islamic or predominantly Buddhist have very low Christian numbers. So Japan, though it is not like a real religion, air quotes, a real religion, Nihonkyo is sort of a philosophy that functions as a religion in people's minds. It's their operating system in Japan. So that's kind of as far as they get in video 1. So we're making better time than they did because their videos were a half hour each. They had 4 of them. We're like 12 minutes in. So hopefully we can move a little quicker. In the second video, they talk about Nihonkyo's 3 major points. Okay, so the second video of the Mattari Seisho Labo Nihonkyo series talks about the 3 points of Nihonkyo. Okay, the 3 points of Nihonkyo, as probably spelled out by Yamamoto. So this is Yamamoto's Nihonkyo. Number 1, there is no definite understanding of a God, big G. No definite understanding of a big G God. Japanese are more animistic, which doesn't really fit the big G God concept. They tend to think about little g gods more than big G gods. So it's sort of against Japanism to declare the existence of God. On the other hand, it's sort of against Japanism, Nihonkyo, to deny the existence of God, because that would be making a definite statement about big G God. So Japanese people in general do not like dogmatic statements about religion, specifically in point 1 relating to a creator God. I personally think a lot of Japanese can sort of reason along a path of reasoning to say, well, eventually we kind of believe in a creator. We can kind of get the idea of a creator, but generally are not really into the idea of dogmatisms one way or another. also, as sort of an extrapolation of that, I do feel like Western Christians tend to be dogmatic about literally everything, and that doesn't also really tend to like travel well here. Like a lot of people, especially tertiary things, a lot of Christians, not as dogmatic about tertiary or maybe political things as Western Christians can be. So yeah, number one, no clear teaching on God would be like a Japanist perspective. Second, Japanese can't understand covenants. Now, I'm not trying to be condescending. I'm just trying to use the words that were in the video. It's not that they can't. It's that they do not like, are not comfortable with, do not feel the need for, the importance of covenants. We have a phrase in the West, blood is thicker than water, which means family is more important than non-family. In Japan, they have a phrase or a word, mizukusai, means that something stinks of water, and it means the same thing. Family, blood or blood and marriage, family is much more important in Japan than relationships that are based on something else. So, for example, at church right now, we're working through Genesis and Abraham, and the way that churches in the West would tend to talk about God's covenants with Abraham, very important stuff. But I think that in order to create applications that make more sense to Japanese people, it's probably more helpful to talk about God as the natural father of Abraham, the natural father of people, the one, or the parent, the one that created people. In that sense, God is the creator, the generator of people, right? In that sense, there is kind of a family tie that's natural, that's more interesting to Japanese people than a sort of like covenantal or contractual or adoptive bond that is perhaps more emphasized in things like the Old Testament and New Testament, which is sort of a translation of Old Covenant and New Covenant, right? So, super important biblical concept, difficult evangelistic concept. So again, I think some of the ideas, it's more like milk and meat stuff for Japanese. And that sounds condescending, and I'm sure that there are things that Japanese much more quickly pick up than Westerners. But things like covenants and the importance of covenants in the Bible are going to be uninteresting to a lot of Japanese that are not Bible students. Okay. Japanism, Nihonkyo, does not do covenants. So no clear teaching on God and no real interest in covenants. More face to face than codified law. So I think that there's a great example. If you live in Japan and this this podcast, what I really, really want to reach is I want to talk to missionaries who are trying to reach Japanese people in Japan, because even that idea, the idea of reaching Japanese in Japan or outside of Japan, seems to have different things involved. It seems to be much more difficult to reach Japanese people inside Japan than outside Japan. No intention of knocking anybody, but the societal pressure in Japan makes it, I think, an extra obstacle. If you drive a car in Japan, then you will intuitively know what I'm talking about here. The Japanese can't understand covenants, or the Japanese group dynamics of a situation prefer a person-to-person resolution over a legal resolution. When I drive my car and I stop at a stop sign, often the people driving perpendicular to me who do not have a stop sign will also slow down or stop when I'm stopped at the same intersection, even though they don't have a stop sign. And I say in my car with my windows rolled up, "What are you doing? Go. You don't have a stop sign. I have a stop sign." And we both look at each other and we bow, and I try to wave them on. And then they go, and we have resolved the situation in a Japanese way. We could have resolved it with a stop sign, which is there, but people prefer to resolve things person to person. Crossing a crosswalk, right? Even if you could make it before the car comes, you're kind of supposed to wait until the car acknowledges you and stops at the crosswalk. Then you both bow, and then you hurry across, right? Even though you could have made it walking without the car slowing down in the first place. But that would be ignoring the other car's presence, right? The driver's presence, and sort of being rude. So you stop until they stop, and then everybody slows down. But then there's this interaction. Everybody's good. It's a person-to-person thing over a legal thing. See what I'm saying? So that's part of Yamamoto. That's my example of part of what Yamamoto's saying in his Nihonkyo. No, Japanese are not into covenants, more into person-to-person resolution over legal resolution. The third sort of tenet, in a sense, of Nihonkyo is there are no tenets of Nihonkyo. That is to say, there are no holy scriptures of Nihonkyo. So, Christianity has the Bible. Islam has the Quran. Right? Etc. Major religions tend to have written, codified, holy scriptures. Nihonkyo, the sort of guiding philosophy of Japanese people, has no clear scriptures. Therefore, Japanese in general don't understand the ideas that a scripture is authoritative or directive for a religion. So often when we try to explain things in Christianity, we sort of do it by proof texting. We walk through a series of statements that brings forth an argument, an apologetic, and each step of the way we cite a scripture verse. Japanese people in general, people who are guided by Nihonkyo, which again the thesis is all Japanese people, don't find the idea of a holy text being directive for religion very compelling or interesting. So people say things like, oh, that crazy guy is being a terrible witness. And then Christians say, yeah, but he's not a real Christian. Look, you can tell by what the Bible says of what a real Christian should act like. And he's not doing that. And they go, why are you bringing the Bible into this? So you can see right there is a pretty mind-boggling dissonance, right? If we in the West who are Christians are citing a holy text, in order to validate what we say about Christianity, but people adherents of Nihonkyo, generally Japanese people, are not super interested in, or just not used to the idea that religious thought pours out of a religious text. That's something that we can really be aware of, how Japanese people think when we talk about Nihonkyo. Alrighty. Okay, so no clear statement, definite understanding of a God, no clear understanding of covenants, and no clear connection of a holy scripture with a religion. What does rule Nihonkyo? If not those things, when you get to video number 3 of Mattari Seisho Labo, they will tell you that while there are no unclear rules, there is an unclear kuki that rules Nihonkyo. So you know the phrase kuki yomu, kuki yomanai, or the ky. Ky means kuki yomanai, right? That means you don't get it. You're being stupid. Like you're not following. You're too sort of dense to get what's going on in a social situation. You're not following social cues, right? Kukiyomu is following social cues. So I wanted to get a really clear definition from the video, which is, written out in Japanese. So I was writing it out to make sure I was doing it right. And basically what they're saying about kuki is that it is a standard of judgment that has absolute control, and it has a supernatural power to punish those who resist it as heretics and socially punish them of their anti-kuki behavior. So going against kuki is the sort of sin of Nihonkyo. Kuki, obviously with a group consciousness, kuki is going along with the program. I think that Nishitani does a good job of expanding on this, but trying to stick with the Mattari Seisho Labo videos on this one. An example would be if you've heard of business meetings in Japan, everybody gets to talk. If the boss or the higher up guy gives an opinion, nobody is going to follow up his opinion with a counter opinion. That would be to go against kuki, right? So that's an example. And then, they say, hey, we had a meeting and everybody agreed. And that's sort of how a lot of people are sort of maybe unhappy with certain democratic processes in Japan, not political, just like within companies or churches or various groups where a sort of socially powerful person speaks. Everybody else is given a chance to speak, but nobody would dare counter that opinion. So you have cookies preserved, harmony. You have wa, right? Another aspect of kuki is that kuki is something to be obeyed even when it's irrational. Like if you're on a baseball team, you have to shave your head. Why? Why are you asking why? You just do it. I mean, obviously, there's other countries in the world that have aspects of this, but in Japan, it is very prevalent. The argument in by Yamamoto is that it's law. It's the law that's sort of in Japanese people's hearts, right? Another thing that the videos bring up about kuki is that we just said it's not rational. It's not defined by or kuki does not allow you to define good and bad by action, but rather by position. The example given in the movies was Anpanman. Anpanman is the good guy. So if Anpanman gets annoyed and punches the bad guy into space, it's the good thing to do because the good guy did it. If he punches Biking Man, even if Biking Man were to punch someone, it'd be bad because he's the bad guy. But if Anpanman were to punch someone, it's not bad because the good guy did it. So that's part of kuki. It's not defined by rationality. It's not subject to rationality or moral code. It's like a river, right? It's a current, and you don't break against the current. So that's sort of what these videos are explaining Nihonkyo is and Nihonkyo is not. You can see in your heads, I think, why a lot of the things that we talk about in Christianity don't aren't grasped by the Japanese on who are not biblical studies students. And I'm not saying that they can't grasp them. I'm saying that they don't have an interest in grasping them. Right? We talk about God's covenant with Abraham or with us, how God adopted us into his family, and things like that. These are uninteresting explanations of what God does for people. So what do we do? So if the kuki ruling Japan is anti-Christian, what can Christians do? The answer given in the Mattari Seisho Labo videos, I think this is video 4 now, was to become like Luffy from One Piece. I'm not sure how many One Piece fans are out there. I have never seen an entire episode of One Piece nor read a One Piece manga, though my wife and kids like it a lot. But I did, with my kids, being good father that I am, watch the Netflix live action One Piece series with them. Luffy is a character that is very optimistic. And what the makers of the videos, the Mattari Seisho Labo videos, are trying to point at when they point at Luffy is that when there is something irrational going on, often there would be like another pirate, because it's about pirates. For example, there was in the beginning of episode 1, try to find, I had some notes. There's a woman pirate, a mean, large woman pirate who has a sort of a, what would you say, like a ship boy kid that is, she has him terrified, and he wants to run away and not be a pirate anymore, but he's so afraid of this pirate woman. And she's saying things about how great she is and how wonderful she is, and nobody dares to, there's an audience of pirates, including our hero and his little buddy. And she's saying all these good things about herself, and then he goes, "Oh, I don't think so. I think you're terrible," or something like that. And he just breaks, breaks ranks. It's kind of like the emperor, "Mommy, why doesn't the emperor have any clothes on?" moment, right? With the story of the emperor's clothes, which are made out of, you guys know this one, the emperor's clothes. So basically what the video was saying was that Japanese, in order to break kuki, Japanese must declare contradictions. So in that sense, examples, for hundreds of years, Japan was closed to the outside. Outside influences were illegal, and then what was it? Commodore Perry came with his black ships, which meant naval ships with guns, that the technology was much higher than what was in Japan. They threatened war if Japan did not open their ports. So Japan opened their ports. Kuki suddenly changed. And as a result, Western missionary work was allowed to begin again after some 300 years, whatever, of policy. One note here that was made was that things won't change so suddenly when a holy book is installed. And again, I think that what that was pointing to was that kuki can change sort of instantly when there's an emperor is naked moment. But holy books or law codes and things don't are not so subjective. So the encouragement from this set of Christian videos, it's made for Christians in Japan, not for outsiders trying to reach Japanese, is to be bold enough to challenge kuki when it is irrational or spiritually oppressive. In a sense, to declare the contradictions when they come up. You can think of your Christian applications for that. I felt like after I watched those videos and I had just come off a fresh read of understanding Japaneseness, the book, there was a really like exciting moment that put both of the conclusions together. Because the Understanding Japaneseness book sort of finishes with an obvious, like, the problem of Japaneseness. And so it right away showed something to declare problematic, to change the kuki, as it were. Essentially, what we're trying to, I think, the kuki that missionaries or Japanese Christians would want to change is hopelessness with the message that Jesus saves. But it's just, I think, a matter of trying to explain what Jesus saves means to Japanese people. Hopefully that's helpful. Again, if you want to watch the original videos, you can do so. I'll put the links in the notes. Tell me what you think. Appreciate the listen, and have a good one.